Welcome to Good Vibes, the podcast that brings the timeless beauty of Eishes Chayil into the rhythm of real life. Each week, we unpack one pasuk, not as a shir, but as a spark for honest conversations, refreshing insights, and a little Torah light you can carry with you. Because meaning shouldn't feel heavy, and connection doesn't have to wait for quiet. This is Good Vibes, for the Jewish woman who's doing a lot and still reaching deeper. Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Good Vibes podcast. So today we are going to discuss Pasuk Pei, and we're going to jump right back in. So Pei states, Pia pascha b'chachma v'toras chesed al lashona. So this translates to her mouth is full of wisdom, and her tongue with kindly teachings, or Toras chesed, whatever that means, which we're hopefully going to unpack. So to me, this pasuk is really jam-packed. Like there's so much going on. What is Toras chesed? What's the difference between peh, which is a mouth, and a lashon, which is a tongue? What does it teach us? What does pia pascha mean, opening up her mouth? With chachma, what's the difference between chachma and Toras chesed? So really, whenever I hear this pasuk, which, is every Friday night, but whenever I hear it, I think of the Ma'amar Chazal that is actually found in Kedushin that says, Asar kavin sicha yadu la'olam, tisha natlu nashim, ve'echad kol ha'olam kulo, which means 10 measurements of language were brought down into this world. Women got 9 out of 10 of them, meaning we got 9 out of 10 of the speaking, talking measurements. And I am sure that many husbands could attest to this, and many of us could also attest to this. I definitely can. I'm literally starting a podcast. I definitely can attest that we have 9 out of 10 of these measurements, and it's just interesting to me. It's fascinating to me. This Mamar Chazal, to me, firstly just teaches us, like, these are the facts. The fact is that we have this, that we have 9 out of 10 of these measurements. Like, we talk a lot, and that's a fact. We have this koach. Obviously, we're going to discuss what it is, what this means, this 9 out of 10, these measurements. What is this koach? We know it's a koach. We know it's a koach of a lashon, of communication, of speaking. We know we need to use it carefully and how it can break and how it can build. I want to take the opportunity to dig deeper. What does this mean that this is something that we have? What does pia pascha b'chachma mean? What does the Eishes Chayil do with her peh and her lashon? How does she take her individual measurement of her sicha within herself and maximize it? So I want to delve deeper into this topic, and honestly, selfishly, because I think it will give me more meaning to my words and more perspective to the importance of this koach that women have. I'm so excited to learn more about this. And today we have on Rebbetzin Tamar Tabak. For the past 20 years, Rebbetzin Tamar Tabak has been exploring classical, Hassidic, Kabbalistic Torah sources in search of answers for the Jewish woman of our generation. She's the founder of the Nexus School of Transformational Torah for Women, where profound teachings are translated into a language that is relevant, practical, and life-changing. She is blessed to share gentle yet powerful paradigm shifts with rising women around the world as they reawaken to their highest feminine potential. Welcome, Rebbetzin Tabak, and thank you so much for being here and taking time out of your busy schedule to be here with us.
Thank you so much, Rachelli. It is so wonderful to be here with you.
Thank you. Amazing. Okay, so why don't you start with walking us through this pasuk? From the beginning till the end. Let's break it down and what all of this means and how we can apply it to ourselves.
All right. So, first of all, I kind of need to apologize in advance if you're not used to me, but take a deep breath. It'll be okay. I'm about to welcome you into our world, the way that we learn at the Nexus School, which is where I'm coming from, the school that I founded, Baruch Hashem. And the way we learn is we approach women's Torah is Torah. There's no such thing as men's Torah, women's Torah. But when the Torah was given to the Jewish people, Ko Tamar lebeis Yaakov v'tagid lebnei Yisrael, it was given to the woman first. So there is such a thing as woman's Torah.
Right.
It's Rashi says Ko Tamar, it's softer Torah versus the kashe kagidim, the harsher dictates of Jewish law, which Hashem gave to the men in a particular way, but he gave the Torah to women first, and he gave it to them with soft speech. So right there at the beginning of the giving of the Torah, there was this difference made between men and women and the power of speech. And if the Torah was given to women with soft speech, the implication is that we have this power of soft speech, which has the power to transform worlds. And this was key in the reason why Hashem gave it to women even before the men. So introducing the way that we learn Torah at the school is through Pardes, through Pshat, Remez, Drush, and Sod. It's through, all the different, the simple meaning, the surface meaning, the pasuk, the verse, through to the midrashic layer, through to the hinted, the ramazim, the hinted layer, through to the Sod, through to the secret, as much as Hashem allows us to access. So when we approach a verse, a theme, we want to touch all those bases. We want to make sure that we know the meaning of the verse, we know the context of the pasuk, and we're also super curious about the deeper meaning and how that applies to us as women. So this is no exception. Pia pascha b'chachma v'soras chesed ala shona. How do we approach this verse? Through pardes, through these 4 levels of Torah. And of course, we want to make those applications into our lives. How does this learning transform us? How does it help us be a better wife, a better mom, a better friend, a better member of our community? Make it really practical. So I think that's what your podcast is getting at, which is, so beautiful.
Thank you. Yeah, we're so excited to hear your insight.
All right. So, firstly, this letter pay is really fascinating. Even though the pay comes relatively late in the Eshes Chayil poem that goes according to the Aleph Beis, if you look very carefully, so open up a tikkun, a Sefer Torah, somewhere where the letters are written with the beautiful Sofer script, the calligraphy, and look inside the pay, and you will see in the negative space, within the heart of the pay, fits like a puzzle, is a base, right? Just like how the pay is like that cuff shape and then it has that trunk coming down and in. So visualize around the white space around is a base, interlocking inside the pay, like 2 pieces of a puzzle, is a base. So pay could stand for pshat, which means the surface, the simple, what you think something, the verse, the Torah is saying. But when you look deeper, when you didn't expect the black to be the backdrop and the white to become the foreground, but actually the black pay becomes the backdrop of a white base popping forward. And that's what happens when you learn Torah in a deep way. What you didn't expect to be hidden there actually becomes revealed to you, and you see everything differently and you become completely transformed. So within the pay, the pshat, the simple surface meaning is the base, which is bina, which is this inner depth, which takes special understanding that a woman has to see deep into things. So I'm going to just keep building a little bit. Stop me if, you have a question or anything. But what's fascinating is that this Pia Pascha B'chachma pasuk links us to the very first pasuk in the Torah, which is Bereshis bara Elokim es hashamayim v'ha'aretz. In the beginning, Bereshis, that base that's inside the pay, Targum says Rashis is a key word for chachma. So it's translated b'chachmasa. With chachma, Hashem created the world. And so too, Pia Pascha b'chachma, through speech, we create our world. So we're just going to keep bringing these layers, right? So it's into the deep, back to, how we experience life, and in again and out again. And it's really one continuum. It's really one, it's all connected. So let's go next to the midrashic layer. Okay, so we've done the pshat, we've translated the verse. You started with some great questions about, what does it mean? She opens her mouth with chachma, with wisdom. The implication is if she doesn't have something wise to say, she doesn't open her mouth, right? The implication is all her words are with chachma. Maybe at the end we can talk about when we get to some of the Kabbalistic parts, the mystical parts. We just mentioned that a woman is all about bina, but chachma is actually ascribed to a masculine power. So So this woman, this Eshes Chayil, is speaking with Chachma, which we always thought was masculine, vis-a-vis the Bina, which is feminine. And then the verse continues, and it says, "Besoras Chesed al Lashona." According to Kabbalah, a woman is more aligned with Gvura, creating, the kalim, the boundaries, like a pregnancy, versus Chesed is more of a masculine characteristic. So both there's Chachma, there's Chesed, which are normally in the deeper sources attributed to masculinity, and women are attributed aligning with Bina and with the power of Gevura, containment, building vessels. So there's a lot of interesting things happening in this verse, but let's try to build it up. And I don't want to rush too far ahead. Let's try to build it slow, but please God, we'll end there. So we translated the verse. She opens her mouth with Chachma, and a Torah of kindness is on her tongue. Right? If Torah is not kind, it's not Torah. Right? Hashem is the ultimate. There's nothing as kind as Torah, right? But we can go off all about kindness, but let's stick with speech here. So, according to the Medrash, I don't know if you know this, Rachelli, but each one of the verses of Eshes Chayil, the Medrash attributes a different woman from Tanakh. And I'm so excited that you gave me this pasuk because at the Nexus, we've spoken so much about Chava, about Sarah, Rivka, Rachel, Leah. This past year, we spoke in depth about Dinah, about Tamar, about Miriam. We're about to go into the semester about the daughters of Tzalafchad. And every now and again, somebody says, wait, what about Sarah Bas Asher? No one talks about her. And she was so unbelievable. And we don't know much about her. So the Medrash says that this pasuk, she opens her mouth with wisdom, and a Torah of kindness is on her tongue, refers to none other than the daughter of Asher, Sarah. So through Sarah, we're going to understand what is Chachma, what is the power of speech, the transformational power of speech. What is a Torah of kindness that's on a woman in Eshes Chayil's tongue? So we said before that the Torah was given first to the woman to teach us that women, ultimately, we know we are acing it when our speech is soft, right? When we're not domineering, we're not controlling, we're not critical, we're not complaining, we're not, right? You name it. But when we can speak softly and our words are heard, right? And it has the effect we're hoping for, we know we are acing it. So not only was Torah given with soft speech, but Sarah Bas Asher comes to teach us that Geula happens through soft speech. Okay, and let's demonstrate from her life how this is so. First of all, it says in the Zohar, Petach Eliyahu, that Malchus, it's called Malchus Peh, the most salient quality of femininity, as you mentioned, that we got 9 out of 10 measures of speech, is Dibor, is the ability to speech, chibor, to connect, to influence reality, right? Through this power of speech. So how did Sarah Bas Asher demonstrate this Pia Pascha B'chachma V'saras Chesed Al Shona, this power of speech? So we know her in 5 different eras, right? She's the only woman that lived to, I don't know if it's exactly or over 1,000 years old. I didn't know that before I started researching her, which was last night. So just in the nick of time. Special shout out for a book by Leah Cohn, Woman in Tanakh. She has a chapter on Sarah Bas Asher. And I also have a commentary to Eshes Chayil that I wrote, and I'd love to draw. I'm going to read to you from my own commentary based on the metric as well. So I'll get to that a little bit later. Okay, so back to what is the life of Sarah Bas Asher? What are her 5 different kufos, or 5 different chapters? You know, reincarnations in the same lifetime. It's like, wow, 1,000 years. So the first time we meet her is when Yaakov had been mourning for the death, or the supposed death, of Yosef. And he was so devastated and so forlorn during that 22-year period of mourning that Ruach HaKodesh, he couldn't have nevuah, he couldn't talk to Hashem because he was so down about his loss. And after 22 years, when it came time for him to discover, for it to be revealed to him that Yosef was still alive, he was old, and everyone was afraid that he would get a shock and he would die. And they chose the daughter of Asher, Serach, to tell him the news in a gentle way. There we have soft speech, gentle. And one opinion is that she sang it to him through music, so it didn't come as a shock. Another opinion is that she asked it to him in a question. This is so brilliant. She said, "Is it possible that Yosef is still alive? Could it be that he has two sons, Ephraim and Manasseh?" By asking questions, it was like a slow way to alert him to the news without shocking him, without it being bad for him. So that's the first time we meet her. And because she restored his joy, she restored his Ruach HaKodesh, he got prophecy again, right? Life looked good again. He blessed her with a long life, and that's why she lived to be 1,000 years, right? So that was her first chapter, right? So we see very prominently the power of speech in how she broke the news to Yaakov gently, being aware where Yaakov was holding. He didn't know Yosef was alive. She wanted to bring him into a new place of knowing Yosef is alive gently, and how she escorted him there sensitively, right? With chachma. That's her first chapter. Her second chapter, quite a while later, over 100 years later, it was towards the end of the exile in Mitzrayim. And Moshe had appeared on the scene, and he was telling the Jewish people he was going to take them out of Mitzrayim, and nobody knew if he was legit. Could they believe him? Is this a false Messiah? And as soon as he said the words Pakod Pakadati, she remembered that it was passed down to her through her father Asher, through Aram, Yitzhak, and Yaakov. That was the code for the Redeemer. So she was the only one who was old enough to be a first-hand recipient, right? She remembered the code and she said, yes, he is legit. So she's the one who told the Jewish people that Moshe could be trusted, right? That he was the Redeemer. So again, there she is in making the connection between redemption and those waiting for redemption. Her next chapter, I'm talking fast because I know that we've got so much you want to cover. The next chapter is they're about to leave Egypt, and they knew they needed to take Yosef's bones with them, but nobody knew where they were. But Serach Bas Usher was alive when they were put into the Nile, and she knew exactly where they were. And she told Moshe Rabbeinu, and Moshe Rabbeinu was able to go to the Nile and to say, we're leaving, come with us. You're delaying our departure from Egypt because we can't go without your bones, Yosef. And he called for them, and they rose to the surface of the water. So there again, she was instrumental in allowing the redemption to proceed. Now guess, Rachelli, the next time she appears. When was the next time? Hundreds of years later. In Eretz Yisrael, in the time of David HaMelech. David HaMelech had just been cursed. So there we have a very infamous usage of speech, right? The power of a curse. He was just cursed by Sheva ben Bichri. And rightfully so, David was enraged, right? This was somebody who was rebelling against the king, Mored B'Malchus. He was approaching the city to murder the city because the whole city was responsible for keeping this man who cursed him, hiding him from the king. And out comes Sarach Bas Asher. And she isn't named such in the verses in the psukim. She's just called Isha Chachma, a woman of Chachma. Pia Pascha B'Chachma, right? A woman of wisdom. And she says to David, she talks to him gently. She doesn't reprimand him abrasively, but she explains to him that he will transgress a terrible sin if he kills innocent people, right? And she imbues trust, right? Because of her longevity and because she remembered the teaching that she learned from Moshe Rabbeinu that you're not allowed to kill others that are not deserving of death, right? And you have to go into the sources there, but she basically saved David from sin, right? And she saved the city from demise, right? At that time. So that was her fourth chapter. And then her fifth chapter is the key that unlocks it all. And that is brought in another medrash in the Psikta de Rav Kahana, that there was a sage who, in the time of the recording of the Talmud, of the Gemara, who was thinking and imagining what it must have been like at the time of Kriyas Yamsuf. And he was saying, well, because there were so many paths, all each Shevet, each tribe had to walk their own path. So the water must have gotten compressed and it must have become opaque and they couldn't see each other. And each tribe must have walked through, these dark tunnels. And just then, who walks into the study hall? I mean, couldn't make this up if you tried, was Serach Bas Asher, 1,000 years old. And she said, I was there. And I could tell you that no, the water did not become opaque. It was a miracle. It remained transparent. And each tribe was able to see through the water, to see all the other tribes crossing together. So even though there was diversity, right, and each tribe had their own path, there was still unity. We each appreciated that there were other paths and they were also coming through the Yam Suf all together. So those are the 5 chapters of the life of Serach Bas Asher. And we want to understand what are the takeaways. How do we take that inspiration and use it practically, right? How do we live with these teachings? What does it mean for us? So, so I have other mystical bits, and if there's time at the end, I could throw them in. But in the meantime, by the way, the mystical parts of my commentary on H's Chayil are based on the students of Reb Moshe David Valley, the Ramad Valley, and it's all written. If you want to read through the whole H's Chayil, I get that the commentary through the Medrash about what each verse, each woman it corresponds to and why, and what we can take out of it, and the mystical side. It's all there. So anyway, number one, the mouth, the speech organs, the throat, Malchus Peh is very feminine because it's situated between the head and the heart. And that's exactly what speech allows us to do. It allows ourselves and it allows others to build a bridge between their head and their heart. It unifies the intellect and the emotions. So I'll read a little excerpt here. So Serach Bas Asher was called upon wherever there was delicate information that needed to be communicated to a vulnerable or volatile party. She was able to use her words to bridge enormous chasms between people negotiating between the head and the heart, as speech is prone to do. Her special wisdom was being able to be fully attuned to the starting position of the recipient of her communication, right? I know what you think. I know what you currently think. I know where you are. I know what you currently feel. And gently escorting them to a new knowing. Her favorite tactic was the use of the question, gently administered to stimulate the answers to come from the very consciousness of the one with whom she was engaged in conversation, right? So is this not the magic of transformation? The bottom lines, powerful speech, constructive speech, communication is the secret of transformation, right? Through speech. This is why in Torah, another word for a leader is a dabar. And that's why Malchus is connected to the mouth, the ability to speak, to convey a vision, right? To bring people to a new understanding, to stimulate their desire, right? And we can't do that when the speech is forceful, when the speech is judgmental, when the speech is bitter or scathing, right? We have to really be a master of our own emotions, to be able to speak from a place of confidence, from a place of balance, from a place of true love, but also healthy boundaries, and of really wanting the best for who we're speaking to. So, those are the three aspects I wanted to bring out. Negotiating between the head and the heart. Sometimes somebody knows it's the right thing, but they don't feel it yet. But when you speak to them, when you empathize with them, when they know that you're with them, right, they're able to travel to new terrain and to consider, a new perspective. So that's being able to bring somebody to transform them from where they are to a new place where they believe something different, they want something different, they are going to go about it in a different way. And we don't do this by bossing them there, but we ask, we inquire, we suggest, we help them get curious, we stimulate them to discover it on their own, right? We become a guide for them. So I think, that Sarah Bas Asher certainly demonstrated the ability to transform the consciousness of whoever she was speaking to in a way that they received her speech, they received her words. So, what is the secret? So many times have you ever tried to tell someone what you thought or give criticism and they don't receive it, and you just pulling out your hair, and how you're going to get them to see things the same way or be on the same page? And I think that's where the fifth chapter of her memory of walking through is the answer. The way that we influence through speech is when we're able to see through the water and honor and appreciate that everyone has their own path, and everyone has their own soul, and everyone has their own perspective and their own peace. And when somebody truly feels honored in that way, like we're able to hold ourselves, we're able to hold the other as two equal, valid perspectives. They feel that respect, and then you bring forth your vision or your how you see it or what you think is possible. They trust you and they're able to receive it from you. So basically, we're getting an equation where influence plus humility and making space for others equals transformation, and even taking it one step more equals, certainly in the case of shalom bayis, equals intimacy. Because both parties, the one speaking, the one listening, the one influencing, the one receiving, both parties are receiving and both parties are influencing, and both parties feel heard, feel there's space for them, feel appreciated. And that creates intimacy.
That's beautiful. I really appreciate that. I appreciate that you took us on this whole journey and brought it practically down to our level. And I think that when I'm thinking about what you were saying, something that keeps sticking out to me is how she asked Yaakov Avinu either in a song or in question. And, I don't think that we're going to start singing songs to our husbands all the time, but gently, gently asking, gently bringing it up with our husbands, with our children, with anybody else we may deal with. And the fact that I never thought about how the mouth, the lashon, the pez between our head and our heart. And that's what it does so frequently. That's what we hope it does, bridging thoughts to feelings. There's that famous story. I don't know who it's spoken about, that somebody asked a big gadol, "What do you do for a living?" And he said, "I build bridges." And they said, "Really? What big bridges do you build?" And he said, "Yeah, I build the biggest bridges." He said, "I build bridges from the head to the heart." And if our mouth can be a tool to do that, like you were showing us, it's a big koach and a big responsibility that we have.
Beautiful. And I think just to end on the chesed piece, Torah's chesed al Shona, that it's a Torah of chesed. And we want to create, as women, we want to create homes of chesed, of loving kindness, where everyone feels good. And it's not abrasive, it's not difficult. There's intimacy, there's people are transforming, people are safe to grow. And the truth of the Torah is able to come through to us to bridge our heart to our head and to connect, build bridges between others as well.
Thank you. Thank you so much. I really appreciate this insight. And I'm so glad you were able to join us and to enlighten us with the unique way that you teach. So thank you again. And if you are listening to this and you would like to hear more from Rebbetzin Tabak or take any of her classes, you can go to thenexus.org where you can see her school. She also offers a course called the Rise into Your Highest Feminine series, where she's going to offer the first month for free. The first class is already live, and the course itself, the series itself, is actually beginning after the summer in Elul. There's also an option to listen over the phone. So you can enroll or you can subscribe at thenexus.org, or you can email into info@thenexus.org to be part of this series and hear more from Rebbetzin Tabak. Thank you again, Rebbetzin Tabak, for being here with us and enlightening us. And thank you all for joining us. Please reach out and email us with any questions or thoughts. We would love to hear from you, and stay tuned for some more good vibes.